Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions for our speaker or panelists today, please enter them into the Q&A. You can see the Q&A at the bottom of the screen on your Zoom screen, and that will allow you to type in your question. We will respond to those questions at the end of our presentation today. This webinar is being recorded, and those who are registered will be able to have a link sent to them by email to the recording after it is done. Thank you, and Lionel, take it away.
Thanks, Marla. I'd like to welcome everybody to the June 5th edition of Crop Talk. We're into June already. It's when we first got started in the beginning of the year, our spring here. It looked like it might be an early season or early seeding season, but in my travels over the last couple of days, a lot of guys have wrapped up, but there's still some seeding happening. So we're still going to have some seeding done in June. So I guess the rains that we've been getting over the last little bit here are definitely welcome, but they've slowed some seeding down. So for today's Crop Talk, we're going to do a bit of a crop update. I'm going to talk a little bit about where we sit as a province in getting the seed in the ground. Also, we're going to have David Kaminsky on, and David's going to talk today regarding the new Fusarium forecasting system that has been developed. And then after that, there's been a couple of questions come in for our crop scouting panel, and we'll deal with those ones. So with that, I'm going to start with the bit of the update or highlights from our crop report. And I guess despite the wet conditions, seeding progress was made throughout the province. And from last weekend, now we're estimated to be at about 83% complete across the province, which is pretty close to being the right on par with what the average is. Spring cereals, about 87 to 94% complete. Canola, about 71. Soybeans 82, peas 97%, and grain corn about 95% complete. One thing you do notice in your travels is that fall rye and winter wheat have definitely started to jump, and you can definitely see them in the fields now as you're driving along. Some of the early seeded some of the fall rye in some areas actually started to head out in some areas. Most of the winter wheat I'm seeing is like the picture on the right, in the tillering stage to early stem elongation. So, it won't be too long before we start seeing some of those heads starting to poke out as well. Spring wheat about 94% complete, and barley about 88, with oats about 87% complete. Most of the early seeded spring wheat is advancing fairly well, and is in that 3 to 4 leaf stage with two tillers. So we're in a stage now where a lot of that early seeded crop is going to need to be sprayed or looking at being sprayed for weeds. Again, everything seems to be moving along fairly well. Grain corn planting about 95% complete, and some of the early seeded corn is in the V3 stage already. So that's stuff. If we do get some heat, and there may be talking later on by the weekend, we could be seeing some mid 20 days. I think that'll definitely help that stuff jump and get going. Canola planting, I guess one of the crops that's still we're not completed on, and most producers that have any acres left to seed, that's usually are basically the crop that's out there right now. So we're about 71% complete right now. Some of the early seeded stuff is poking through the ground, early cotyledon stage to maybe the real early stuff with a couple leaves. I think cool conditions have maybe played a factor with that. The rain and the cool, damp soil is maybe slowed some of the germination down. So we're hoping for some heat to get that stuff going. Sunflower planting about 53% complete across the province. Early seeded sunflowers are in the cotyledon stage and kind of maybe just getting the first true leaf. A lot of them breaking through the ground right now. And flax about 64% complete. Uh, Field peas, picture on the right shows some stages of some of the field peas already in some areas. So you can definitely see that they're anywhere from the 3 to 5 node stage in some places, advancing fairly well. Peas handle the cooler weather a little bit better, so they're definitely doing well right now. Soybean planting about 82% complete, and with most fields in the unifoliate stage, but a lot of it just nicely starting to poke through the ground now too. So I think we'll see in the next week or so here a lot of the crop actually poking through the ground and getting going. So I think we're just in that stage now where the early seeded stuff is going to need to be sprayed, and we're just waiting on some of this later seeded stuff to get off and going. So where do we sit compared to our averages? And when you look at we're sitting right now at about 83% with our 5-year average at about 88%. So pretty much right on par with what the normals what our normal is, and looking like an average spring right now. Just a couple notes regarding seeding dates. And when you look at the graph here from MASC that puts this out, where we see where after certain seeding dates where our yield potential is going to, and right now really the only crop that's above 80% chance of getting 80% of the average yield is canola right now. And so I think as we see these lines start to drop fairly quickly, we definitely need to get those remaining acres in as quick as we can. Okay, so with that, I'm going to get Dave to talk about the new Fusarium forecasting system that's been developed. And so, David, if you want to grab the screen and take it away.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to have to try this again because well, it's still showing as Lionel's screen, and I can't seem to wrestle it away from him.
So if you go ahead. If you go to click on share or share my screen,
there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Sorry for the delay.
No problem.
Thanks, Lionel, and welcome everybody. It's time to talk about this new Fusarium risk mapping tool, and to go over what is actually new about it and how can we use it if you haven't been looking at it already. Okay, first we'll give you a quick outline or a quick review of what the old risk map looked like and what it accomplished. It was only posted daily and during weekdays, as a matter of fact. On Mondays, there would be 3 postings, which would cover the weekend. The time of day that it was posted was usually around 4 o'clock. So sometimes people were antsy to see it earlier in the day. The model really only applied to wheat and possibly winter wheat. We would start it off in the year early enough that it would cover the winter wheat crop, which is coming to a vulnerable stage earlier than the spring crop. The model was first implemented more than 20 years ago, and we are beginning to be concerned about the accuracy of the model, whether it was telling us the truth. Perhaps we were having some changes in our climate that would affect that accuracy as well. Before we get to the new tool, that picture on the right is from a couple of years ago, but that is winter wheat emerging from the boot. And according to the latest crop report, a lot of the winter wheat that's out there is either at the stem elongation stage or the heads are already in the boot. So it's not far away that we should be thinking about whether the crop is vulnerable to Fusarium infection or not. So the new mapping tool, one of the first advantages is that it's applicable right across the prairies. There was often some question. The Manitoba map looks a little bit different from the Saskatchewan map. And for those producers that are right along the border, they wanted to know about what's the difference there. This model is run across weather stations that span right across the prairies, and so can show us the full scope of things. Although we can zero in on just our province if that's your desire. It's also not only daily reporting, but near real-time reporting. The weather stations, of course, are updating every 15 minutes or so and reporting every hour or so. And the data feeds into the model automatically, so it is very up to date. And besides wheat, it now includes barley and durum, although in Manitoba, the amount of durum that is grown is a very small amount. The new model or the new mapping tool allows you to set your own parameters, even to look backwards in time a little bit, and to zero in on your location. Before we had to kind of figure out where we were with respect to the major centers on the map. Now you can look at a 10 by 10 kilometer pixel that shows you the risk. Again, to review what the map used to look like, there on your left is a screenshot from last year, later in the season. And again, this is posted daily on weekdays. There was an animated GIF which showed you the maps from the previous 7 days, and that ran continuously. At least that could tell you whether the risk in your area was increasing or decreasing. And again, it was only applicable to spring wheat and winter wheat developed 20 years ago. So if you still have that page bookmarked, the same link that's there will get you to that landing page. Or you can access it through this progression from the Government of Manitoba website. You go to agriculture, then crops, then seasonal reports. I'm going to do a live demo in a few minutes, but first of all, we'll look at what the new forecast looks like. So this is, first of all, the landing page if you come through Manitoba Agriculture, say that bookmark that you had on your screen. You can probably now bookmark the new site, which has a very simple URL. It's prairiefhb.ca. And here's a brief rundown of some of the advantages of the new mapping tool. We are, for the foreseeable future, going to do a screenshot like this and post it every week, usually on Thursdays, just for those who are getting to this late in the game and have not seen it before. This is what they will see. It's a snapshot from once in the week, but at least it's a place to get you started. And again, the link will take you forward to the new mapping tool. So last Thursday, zooming in on just Manitoba, that's what the map looked like with selecting that date. The crop type you can see now is a selection of winter wheat, spring wheat, barley, and durum. You can put in the variety that you're growing and look at the type of risk. For many of these, it's only available as the risk of Fusarium head blight, that is symptoms developing. But in spring wheat, we also have the forecast for Fusarium damaged kernels that you might see at the end of the season, or the toxin. And down here at the province, you can choose the whole prairies or just the province that you are located in. Now I'm going to back up and go to that live link and we'll fire that up. That did not do it. So I'm going to try there. Okay, here we are at the opening page of the new mapping tool. And you can see that URL is very simple, prairiefhb, all one word, .ca. There are two places that you can jump into the map, either down here or up in the top right. So let's do that right away. There's the whole prairie region. That's where we're going to start. And for the purposes of argument, let's look at today's date, although I'll bring up the map and point out that although looking into the future is grayed out, looking into the past, we can scroll back in time and look at what the forecast looked like last week, for instance. Crop type. Right now, it's really only appropriate to look at winter wheat, although we'll show you the difference with spring wheat in a short while. If you click on the variety, doesn't show anything right away, but there's a pull down here. And I have been using AC Gateway because right now that's at the top of the list in terms of popularity, acres sown in Manitoba. And then again, the risk, we only have one choice available. That's Fusarium head blight. Pardon me. Hope I haven't screwed up here. And province, there's pull down, and that is either view all or zoom in on Manitoba. I think because there might be some people either along the border or in Saskatchewan, we're going to select the view all first. And now we're ready to show results. And there's the map right across the prairie region. It shows that Manitoba is at relatively high risk throughout, but there are parts of the rest of the prairies where we're down to low in some cases. Let's zoom in on just Manitoba. Again, show results. Boy, there's no variation today. Perhaps we should go back in time, but I just want to point out that you can zoom in on this map. And once you have zoomed in, you can move around. Yes, the risk is lower in the city of Winnipeg. How about we, rather than time traveling, just change to spring wheat, choose the most common variety, AC Brandon. Here you can see that the risk parameters, you have two options, including Fusarium damaged kernels, but we'll leave it at Fusarium head blight and show results. And that shows that the risk is far lower, and that likely has much to do with the development stage of the crop. Although not entirely, the model is still showing you what the risk would be if you had a crop that was at the vulnerable stage. I'll just point out some of the other functions. We're on the map, but there is a link to weekly crop reports, and these are available for all provinces. I'll check whether or not we're up to date on today, 2024. That looks like last week's report, so I won't go there. And how do I go back? This is what happens when you do a live demo. You don't have a back button. I'm just going to try and close, and we'll go back through from the beginning. And that same bookmark that you had would take you to this landing page, but if you're now using this URL as your bookmark, it's going to take you to the tool and the map. And there is a frequently asked questions page, which, if you haven't been taking notes on what we've been talking about, I think that use of the mapping tool is quite intuitive, but you may have some questions as you use it. Here's one of the most important ones. This is a free tool for everyone to use. Over the last 3 years, there has been the development of this model with funding from grants and funding partners. And there are a number of providers of the weather data. Here in Manitoba, we're fortunate that they're all in-house weather stations. There are more than 120 in Manitoba, and those are what feed into the weather or the tool. And I also want to show you, I'll just jump back to, I'm going to go back in time perhaps for fun. We'll go back to the 2nd and choose winter wheat. And my variety gateway, and the risk is staying there. We'll look at the whole prairie region this time. And then maybe I'll zoom in just a little first of all and click down here, this layers button down in the bottom, and it says stations. And all of a sudden you'll see gray dots, which represent where the weather stations are. And you can see that in Manitoba and Alberta, we're a little bit better off than in Saskatchewan, where the network is not yet as dense as we would like it. But that is changing all the time. They're putting up new stations as well. I don't know why. Oh, there it's coming into focus. And I think that's just about everything that I can show you in the live demo, except that there is an export function where you can capture and save an image of what you're looking at for future reference. Say this is the day you're making your to spray or not to spray decision. It would be nice to have what the map looks like. It would maybe be something else if you're looking at a region where there is quite a bit of variation still. And I'm just going to zoom in a bit to show you that 10 by 10 kilometer is the size of the prediction. So if you're in that block, that is a lower risk than if, well, maybe you even farm 15, 20 miles away, have some land over there that's showing a higher risk. So maybe I'll ask Lionel if any questions have come in while I'm showing this tool. And I'll just mention that I also have Timmy Ojo on the line today as a panelist. He was actually involved in the research that led to the development of this tool, which took place over the past 3 years and is continuing on for another 3 years. We'll be doing more model validation as time goes on.
Hey, David, regarding the Zoom, the thing that you were just doing there, so that was as close as you could get, so you can't actually get a like a legal description or something. You need you could get like a 10 kilometer.
Yeah, that's correct. And I guess still you're using proximity to location, such as where we were, how close you are to Weyburn, for instance, but you can also see some geographical features, lakes, etc., some highways that show you approximately where you are.
Okay. So regarding the, this seems to have a fair bit of detail regarding varieties. So where was that information, or how did they come about, saying, okay, Gateway is the one you're using, is some varieties, would, if you picked a different variety, would the Fusarium level change, or was that taken from seed guides, or?
Well, I asked Timmy that question earlier in the week and learned that although there is differences in the varietal sensitivity or tolerance of Fusarium head blight, that is not yet really worked into the appearance of the map. One thing was that during the development of the model, we were in drier years. So we haven't had a year with a high level of disease intensity. And that is the kind of thing that will lead to showing the difference between varieties. But for the time being, it's just maybe a reminder to you which you're looking at for yourself. But no, it will not change the appearance of the map. Go to an older variety like Buteo and show results. And it's pretty much the same as it was for Gateway.
Okay. And then the other question was regarding barley. Is the map going to be any different because of the way Fusarium affects barley?
Affects barley. The appearance of the map, I believe, is going to be quite different, but it would be different from, say, spring wheat. Go with one of those. So right now, very low, but I think that I showed you spring wheat earlier on. Maybe I'm stuck on that date of the second. Oh, I have to put in the variety. Most common is Brandon. Yeah, there are definitely differences between barley and wheat, as there are differences in the appearance of infection. If after the fact you have not been able to apply fungicide in a timely fashion, or you have some check strips in your field.
Okay, and one question I just got here was how long will this the prediction run for? Like, I guess the question would probably be, what is the last date, I guess, for the year, I guess.
Question, Lionel, and perhaps I cannot answer that because I either don't remember or didn't. So, Timmy.
Yeah, David, do you want me to jump in?
Here's Timmy.
Yeah,
we can hear you, Timmy.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, thanks, David, for the presentation. That was really great overview of the tool. And the tool that we have released starts May 15, because before May 15, we don't expect that, even with winter wheat, it wouldn't have been at the stage that is susceptible for infection. So every year it starts on May 15, and then it goes until August 31st. Beyond August 31st, we expect that all the cereal crops would have been harvested at the time throughout the prairie provinces. So it goes from May 15th to August 31st. And if I can just quickly also address the other question in terms of the appearance for the different varieties.
Yeah.
So right now, as David showed, we don't have varietal differences showing up yet. And that's not because we did not see any difference at all during the project. We actually did, we saw quite a few differences in terms of the varieties. So when we conducted the research, we decided to look at three different categories. So the first one was the category, regardless of the variety, we categorize them to susceptible or moderate to susceptible. So that is one category. The second category is the intermediate. And then the last category is the resistant or moderately resistant varieties. That being said, personally, I have to always look at the seed guide to know where what the resistance level is for these varieties. So we thought that it would be best to have the tool display the varieties so that producers can select the variety of interest. Now, during the research, we saw slight differences in terms of the varietal differences, but they were not statistically significant for us to develop new models of them. And as David mentioned, this project was conducted between 2019 and 2021. And those 3 years, as most folks would remember, were on the dry side. So we are continuing to collect data to improve the model. And we hope that with more data sets, we'll be able to tease out more varietal differences. And at that time, we would be able to update the model And something that I know we've also received in terms of questions is how do these new models compare to the previous model that we used to use? So in the past, as David mentioned, we only had spring wheat model, and it was one of the model that we brought in from the US, research conducted in the States, and we adopted the model and started using it. When we developed this new model, we compared it to the old model we used. And despite the fact that these new models were developed when things were quite dry, they gave us better accuracy. Close to 80% was the accuracy that we saw with these new models. The old model was about 57, 50, just shy of 60% was the accuracy from the old model. I always say that there is no model that would give you 100% accuracy. And that's why we continue to collect more data such that we would develop this model to give us better accuracy. And the more data points, the more data sets we're able to bring in, the better the accuracy that we would have. So that's what's happening. And the last thing I want to quickly touch on is the different results that we are seeing from the various crop types. So spring wheat compared to barley. Each of these models have a set of equation that is under the hood. So that's what's running underneath the tool that you're seeing. It's a set of equation that uses weather parameters. For spring wheat, for instance, spring wheat uses a combination of the last 14 days of relative humidity, maximum relative humidity, as well as the temperature between 25 and 28 degrees. For barley, we are actually using the rainfall because it's a different way. So we use rainfall as one of the input parameter for barley. So each of the crops do have different input parameters that we use based on testing over 80 different parameters and checking which of those combinations gave us the best accuracy to what we were seeing on the field in terms of Fusarium incidents. So yeah, I think that's all I've got, and yeah, I'll be happy to take more questions. And again, thanks, David, for such a wonderful overview.
Okay, just one more question regarding the weather stations. In Manitoba, are you just using the Manitoba weather stations, or it's my understanding in Saskatchewan, they're using a combination of weather stations? Is just, I guess, the information coming in, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So for Manitoba, we are mostly using the Manitoba Agricultural Weather Program that has 120 weather stations. So the good thing about the program is that the stations are also very well geographically spread. So you do see very good coverage across the province. But we also bring in Environment Canada's weather station. So Environment and Climate Change Canada currently has about 24 weather stations within the agricultural region of Manitoba. So we bring that in as well to give us about 144 weather stations that contribute into this information every day.
Okay, good. David, back to you.
I really don't have any more to add, and thanks, Timmy, for filling in those details that I couldn't, especially talking about the different models that go behind each crop. Unless there are any other questions, I think that I should probably just turn the screen back to you. And there were some other questions that came in during the week on other topics, Lionel.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, guys. And I will take the screen back here and we'll get into some of the questions. And if some questions come up later on regarding the Fusarium mapping, we can address them through from now to the end of the session today.
To do something, Lionel, in order to let it go, I did say stop sharing.
I think I have the screen, Marla.
Yep. Everything
okay.
looks good. Perfect.
All right. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks. Okay, so there's been some questions come in this past week here, and I think one of the biggest questions that I've been getting is regarding spraying and current weather conditions, and it's windy, daytime high winds and stuff like that is happening. So there's definitely a lot of cautions that need to be taken when spraying. And then, the other answer is, well, it's not windy at night. So what if I do all my spraying at night? So I thought this would be a good opportunity for maybe to get Kim on to come and maybe deal with a couple of these questions. So Kim, I think I had mentioned these the other day to you, and you were able to maybe put a couple slides together. So if you wanted to take the screen, it's yours, and we can deal with some trying to get some spraying done in these kind of conditions.
Yeah, I'm having some issues with my laptop right now. It's frozen.
Oh.
So
Okay, no problem.
I will just, if I can get it going, I will. I don't know what's happened, but just having some technical difficulties. Sorry about that. But basically, we have talked in the past before about difficult spray conditions, and I know it was terribly windy this last couple of weeks. We've been very wet. Guys are trying to get on the field. And we're still trying to do burn off while we've got crop up already. We've got such a, we've been seeding since the end of April. And so this has become a real problem. And one of the issues besides wind is temperature inversions and having issues with drift. We're quite concerned about some of the drift issues that we've seen happening already this year. Wind is one of the biggest ones of them. I mean, you've got some good slides there, Lionel, especially that upper right-hand slide with it blowing there. When in really windy conditions, we know we can get drift. We also can get drift when there's temperature inversions. So we do have to be really careful spraying early morning and spraying at night when you have a temperature inversion. And that is basically when you'll get cooler air trapped at the closest to the surface of the earth, of the ground that and so normally, like, warm air rises, cool air sinks, and normally you'll get turbulence, and you'll get mixing of air, and so what happens during a temperature inversion is that the colder air it gets trapped, and it just can't move. It doesn't move up. The warm air doesn't. There's no circulation of air, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so so when you have these temperature inversions, and they tend to occur, late at night or towards dusk, and then at dawn, basically at sun, at the two ends of the day, when we're trying to get some spraying done too. If you have a temperature inversion, your product is much more at risk of drifting and moving off site, because that you can actually it'll just basically move, and it can move fairly long distances as well. You'll see when you've got drift from temperature inversions, it will follow topography, so you'll see it moving like downhill. So in rolling country, you'll see these spray drift clouds. They'll actually move downhill. So there's some things to watch for, I guess, if you think you're in a temperature inversion. Basically, if you've got dew or frost, I mean, obviously with frost, we wouldn't want to be spraying at all. But when you've got dew forming, you're actually already in an inversion, because the cold air, you've got cold air right closest to the surface of the earth. And then after that, there's a few other things you can look for. Things like you're more at risk for a temperature inversion when you've got large temperature swings between day and night, which we really haven't had a lot of that yet, but that can and will happen. So you'll get these big temperature swings. If it's really calm and there's no wind at all, then you have to be really careful for temperature inversions there. Again, dew or frost is an indication that you're already in a temperature inversion. If you see smoke or dust in the air, so when you're out in the country and on the gravel roads, and when when cars are going by, cars and trucks are going by, and you see that dust cloud just hanging in the air, then and it's not moving, you can see you're in a temperature inversion there as well. And then sometimes when you smell odors, like from livestock operations or things, they'll travel a long ways. If they're more noticeable at night, then you normally would see them. And then also clear nights, when it's clear out and you don't have a lot of cloud cover, you're more at risk for an inversion. So there's really, there's not a lot you can do about it. You just have to wait. I mean, if you're in a temperature inversion, you shouldn't be spraying because the risk of spray drift is just too high.
Okay, Kim, regarding dew and humidity, I guess more dew. The question I get a lot of times as well. So how much dew is too much dew? Whether I'm going early in the morning when the grass is still wet or late at night when the dew's starting to settle on the plants. Any comments regarding that?
Well, I guess the biggest thing with dew is because of the temperature inversion, you're more at risk of drift. But on top of that, when when your plants are wet and you're spraying, if they're so wet that your spray droplets are going to roll off, then your spray can be completely ineffective. So it's kind of a double whammy when you've got dew forming. You're already out of time. You're already in that temperature inversion, and a light dew is if the plants are starting to get wet, that's not as much of an issue. But sometimes our plants are really like soaking wet, like when you walk through them, your pant legs are soaked. You have to be careful when you're spraying in those cases, because when the plants are that wet and if the droplets are hitting them, lots of times those droplets can actually just roll off the plant because the plant is already saturated. So that's another thing you have to watch with the dew. But the biggest thing by far is the fact that the temperature inversion and the risk of drift.
Okay. And this question actually just came to me yesterday regarding aerial application. Is Roundup registered by AIR? And then if it is, what other products mixed with Roundup are registered?
Ooh, that one I'm not sure on. Hang on, let me check on that one.
Okay.
I know some products have you have to check labels now, especially with generics, and I'm not sure if it's registered by AIR first thing in the spring. But I'm just checking aerial application. There are some brands okay, so I will read you what's in the current guide to crop protection. Credit 45R, Crusher Plus, Glide Force, WDG, Matrix, and Shotgun are not registered by AIR. And then all other products are registered, but they're registered for pre-harvest treatments. So again, you have to be careful with that. Only Roundup WeatherMax may be applied by AIR when fields are too wet to access by ground sprayer for pre-seed burn down. So basically you've got Roundup WeatherMax and that's it. So you have to read labels. You cannot use just any generic glyphosate. Some of them don't have aerial application at all. Some of them are only for pre-harvest, and the only thing that is registered for pre-seeding is Roundup WeatherMax.
Okay, that's good information. And the other thing regarding, and this is maybe just one of my things I noticed regarding drift, it's definitely a great opportunity to get out in your field and see what else is going on, because a lot of times people will see a bit of drift and they'll go out and they'll assume that it's drift across, that all the damage was the drift. And in a lot of cases, it's not just drift, it's something else. And I know one example was I was out in a field this week, and there was some noticeable drift along the edges of the field. But when we got walking the whole field, there was a drill problem, and it showed up to be more of an issue than the drift. So it's an opportunity for you to get out there and check your fields and see what's going on. And I think this time of year is the right time of year to be out there and seeing how well your equipment is working.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. And two, to be walking fields when you're planning on spraying and conditions are iffy, because I know lots of guys have had to spray in higher winds than they wanted to. They've been spraying late at night, early in the morning, and so definitely more conducive to drift. But get out there and don't do your drive-bys when you're driving by. Your 60-mile-an-hour drive-by. You have to get out and walk your fields and make sure you're looking. You see the weeds that you're looking for, but also check the neighboring fields and see if that crop is just coming out of the ground. Because even if you're spraying something like glyphosate, that is a systemic herbicide, It's going to hurt an awful lot of crop. It'll hurt almost every crop we've got out there. It will hurt unless they're glyphosate tolerant, obviously. But you know, it's even when those vulnerable crops like our cereals are just coming out of the ground, and that's hard to see unless you don't see that from a drive-by scouting. You have to get out and check. And so, you know, even on your own fields, I know guys are saying, oh, it's just my fields all around and nothing's up. Well, you need to be really careful. Even if we're getting that first cotyledon, that first leaf out, you can still have drift issues on those tiny plants. So you need to be walking the fields at this time of year, you know, not only to be checking for other things, but you're checking for the weeds that you're trying to kill, but you're also checking the surrounding fields to make sure nothing's up, or make sure you know what those crops are. Again, if you've got some non-GMO soybeans next to GMO soybeans, depending on what kind of canola you're growing. I mean, most of it's Liberty Link, but we have some really good varieties of Clearfield and Roundup Ready varieties out there now too. So we're getting more and more of those on the landscape. So you just need to be really careful when you're doing any kind of spraying this time of year.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially crop that's just coming through the ground, because if you don't notice it's coming through the ground, it doesn't take much drift to kill that plant, and then for it to basically disappear. And then the question is, was there a plant there, or you know, was it up and was killed, or did it not come up, or you know, so that always runs into that question as well. So.
Yeah. And if you're concerned about spray drift too, depending where the drift is, if it's on a field right next door, but if it's across a road, check your ditch weeds for drift, you know, for drift symptoms and things like that as well. There's lots of things to check for when you're suspecting a drift issue. So.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Hopefully your computer problems get solved for you.
Yeah. I have an unstable internet this morning and everything's frozen, so I'm not sure what I've done. I've done something.
Okay.
Who knows?
Okay. Next thing that came in is seeding deadlines. And I had a question regarding soybeans the other day, and I had reached out to Dennis Lang to maybe address this one, but Dennis actually is not feeling good today. So I put some information together from the MASC website. And so deadlines for soybeans. The province is divided into actually 4 areas, and you'll see that on the map on the top right-hand corner. You got the blue, the pink, gray, and then the green. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are your areas. So for June 8th, the deadline is for area 1. So that would be the blue area, with extended deadline to from June 9th to the 13th. When you talk extended deadlines, your coverage will be going down for those seeding dates. For June 4th, which has passed already, for areas 2 and 3, and again extended from the 5th to the 9th, which is basically the next couple of days here. So you can still get some in, but your coverage will not be full coverage. And for the green area, and I can see I made a spelling mistake there, May the 30th for area 4, and no extended coverage there. So basically, if you're in the green area, you're past the crop insurance coverage. If you're in the gray area, you got a couple days for extended coverage, and if you're in the blue area, you've got a couple days to get your soybeans in. I'm going to just mention that if you have any questions regarding the seeding date, to always check with your local MASC service center. They will have exact information for your location and your legal description. So even if you're sitting on the borderline of some of these areas, you probably should be checking with them just to make sure of your coverage. Regarding seeding deadlines, I thought it'd be good to maybe just give a little bit more information on some of the other crops. And basically, you know, for most of the other crops, the deadline is June 15th or earlier, depending on the crop. And then there's a 5-day extended coverage, which would take us to about June the 20th again. That would be for reduced rates. So again, if you're we're not there yet, but for a lot of the other crops, we're getting closer and closer. If you're growing some of these specialty crops, definitely check with your MASC office to make sure your coverage is still there, and watch the 15th as it approaches, because those will be some of our deadlines that are going to be important here. So again, if you got any questions, contact the MASC Service Center, and they can give you the exact information for your farm. Field crop protection guides, and you can see how good they are just now when we were talking to Kim on there, and she quickly looked up about aerial application. So again, can't stress how important it is to have one of these books in your possession when you're out there doing some spraying. It's just got all the information you need, and so definitely make sure you pick up one of these books that are available at all the MASC service centers, or contact your crop production specialist, and they can get them to you. Regarding the Manitoba hay listing, I'm still seeing trucks hauling hay. So some areas are still buying hay. I think some producers might be taking advantage and maybe looking at pre-buying some for next year as well. So if you've got hay that you're looking at parting with, definitely a good place to list your hay and get it moved. The crop production extension specialist. Here's our contact information as well as our locations. As we get more and more into crop emerging, I know I've been seeing little things happening out in the field that if you need some help figuring out what's going on, definitely give any one of these people a call and they can give you a hand figuring it out. Livestock people, a lot of the cattle are out on pasture now. So if you got any questions regarding, questions of what's going on in the pasture, grazing, whether you're going to rotational graze or set up some kind of system, lots of good information from these people. And even if you're talking herd health, if you've got some questions, give them a call. There's the locations of our MASC service centers. And as I mentioned, if you've got any questions regarding seeding deadlines, and we'll be soon in the process of doing seeded acreage reports. So make sure you contact them for any information to help you fill out those forms. I would imagine too, if you're looking to buy hail insurance, they'll be available at MASC offices as well. And one thing that I wanted to mention, and Marla, I will get you to maybe mention it now if you like, to talk about the crop diagnostic school.
You bet. Thank you, Lionel. So Crop Diagnostic School, I will get Lori to add a little comment or a link in the recording when she sends it out. But if anybody is interested in signing up to attend Crop Diagnostic School, the dates this year are July 3rd and 4th, and then 9th, 10th, and 11th. So there are 5 dates for agronomists to attend. The cost is $175 again this year. It will probably provide about 5 continuing education credits for CCAs. And if you're interested in registering, you can send an email to mbcropschool@gmail.com, which is our email address. Again, I'll add that information to the link that Lori sends out. And yeah, we just need to know your name and what date you want to attend, and if you have any dietary restrictions. The other option is for any farmers who are in the crowd listening right now. If they're interested in attending Farmer Day, which is being supported by the Commodity Association. If you are a member of any one of the 3 commodity associations, then you can attend for free. Farmer Day is on Friday, July 5th. If you are not a member, you can still attend as a farmer. We will just invoice you the cost of $75 to attend. So again, I will get Lori to add that information, so you have those links in the recording.
Great. Thanks, Marla. And we'll make sure we have the up in the next crop talks to make sure everybody sees it a few times before the deadline for registration. So thanks again. And again, if you have any questions, or if you've got some suggestions for Crop Talk, definitely give myself or you can email Lori. I'd like to thank the presenters today, David and Timmy. Good job there. And join us next week, June 12th, for the next edition of Crop Talk. Thanks for attending.